Hey, what's going on, y'all? What's up? So, after the R. Kelly conviction, of course, there's thousands of videos that I want to make, but to be honest with you, I'm so busy with my personal life that I don't know what videos I'll get a chance to make. But one video I definitely wanted to make, and I decided to just go ahead and get this out here today, is a video that covers R. Kelly finances, right? So, this is going to be a very brief video. And when I say covering R. Kelly finances, I'm not talking about all the money he's made throughout his career and what happened to that money, so on and so forth. But his finances now, what are his finances going to be like after the conviction? And more importantly, I want to answer, or I want you guys to answer. And I want you guys to let me know if you think it's a good idea to send R. Kelly money directly to a commissary account or directly to some prison account. Do you guys think this is a good idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? Let me know what you think before I even start this video. Comments below. And I want to know what your thoughts are about sending money directly to R. Kelly. Now, of course, this is a question for R. Kelly supporters. It's not really a question for people who don't support R. Kelly or people who think R. Kelly is getting what he deserves, right? So this question is not for you because obvious we know the answer to that, right? But for the people who support R. Kelly, do you think it's a good idea to send R. Kelly money directly through some type of prison account or a commissary account? And the reason I ask this question is because I've seen videos where people talk about sending money directly to R. Kelly as opposed to a lawyer or third party. Now, I'm not advocating, I am advocating, but I'm not going to tell you what I'm actually advocating people to do. I want people to basically come up to their own conclusions. And I'm just going to show you what I saw and what I was thinking when the topic of finances have come up. Now, money is going to be pretty important to R. Kelly right now because right now he's been convicted. So he needs to be able to appeal that conviction. And to have a really good chance at an appeal, you need a good lawyer. And sometimes you have to pay for good lawyers. Now, I think that if R. Kelly is found to not have any money, then the court will appoint a lawyer for him so that he can appeal, right? And money is also going to be important to R. Kelly because he has a Chicago trial. And I'm not sure whether or not the attorneys are going to represent R. Kelly for free or pro bono or because it's a popular case. But if they decide not to, then money is going to be pretty important for R. Kelly, right? So let me just go ahead and get into this video. And again, I'm asking the supporters the question, do you think it's a good idea to send money directly to R. Kelly? Now, I have with me right now, I have the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. And let me just get this straight. No, I'm not a lawyer. I have no license to practice law, right? But just because you're not a lawyer doesn't mean you can't read and understand the law. So everything that I give on my videos are fact-based, right? Everything is fact-based, right? So it's up for you, the viewer, to decide whether or not you believe me or not. But, the facts are the facts. So we have the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. And in the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, we're going to talk about a few things. Here, let me just scroll through this stuff really fast. We're going to talk about some things. The topic right now that we're going to cover is that we're going to talk about briefly. We're not going to cover all this stuff. We're going to talk about the post-conviction procedures, right? Now, specifically in the post-conviction proceedings, we're going to start off with the pre-sentencing report as it pertains to money, right? So let me just do a quick search. Okay, so now we are going to talk about the pre-sentencing report. 1 second here. Just trying to find the section where it really gets down into okay, so here it is. So pre-sentencing report. And basically, for those that don't know, the pre-sentencing report is a report that's created by a prison professional, and he sits down with the defendant or the convict, and he basically gets information from him so that the judge can impose a sentence, right? Now, everyone knows that whenever a person is convicted of something, there's typically a financial there typically finances associated with this, right? So one part of the pre-sentencing report is that the professional is going to essentially get financial information from the defendant, right? So it says additional information. The pre-sentence report must also contain the following. And then I'm just going to skip down to the part that I'm trying to get to. The defendant's financial condition and any circumstances affecting the defendant's behavior that may be helpful in imposing his sentences or in correctional treatment, right? So they want to gather his finances, right? So they're going to be looking, and I'm starting with this because it's important for people to understand that now they are going to control R. Kelly's money, right? But in order for me to get into that, I have to show you all the facts, right? So there's this document, this report that's going to be created, and it's called the pre-sentencing report. And they're going to try to discover everything that R. Kelly has in that report, right? So if you disagree with what I'm saying, definitely comment below and let me know what you think and let me know why you disagree. But they're going to start to get into his pockets, right? And after all, what was all this about anyway? Everybody knows it's about money, right? So now we're going to talk about another piece of the post-conviction proceedings, and that's going to be criminal forfeiture, right? So here they talk about criminal forfeiture, Rule 32, right? So if we go ahead and we skip on down to Rule 32, we'll see the method and the techniques that they're going to use, sentencing and judgment, that they're going to use to 32.2, I'm sorry, 32.2. We're going to see how they are going to start. Actually, what am I doing wrong here? This thing is not popping up the way it should. Okay, so here we go. Criminal forfeiture, right? So it basically says, notice to the defendant, a court must not enter a judgment of forfeiture in a criminal proceedings unless the indictment or information contains notice to the defendant that the government will seek the forfeiture of property as part of any sentence in accordance with the applicable statute. The notice should not be designated as a count of the indictment or information. The indictment or information need not identify the property subject to forfeiture or specifically the amount of any forfeiture money judgment that the government seeks, right? So for those of you that have been paying attention to the whole court proceedings that's been going on from the indictment, you'll know that in the indictment, at the bottom of the indictment, they talk about criminal forfeiture, right? Or the garnishment proceedings. So they have already given notice to R. Kelly that they were going to do this, and it's in the actual indictment, right? So from there, this whole document, and I'm not going to basically go through all of this, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to let you know what they're about, what's next in terms of R. Kelly's finances. They're about to take his money, right? Or whatever, if he has any money left, right? Because everyone knows he went through this thing before where they had child support judgments against him. They had a real estate judgment against him. They have all these financial judgments against him, and they are about to basically take anything that he has left. Me personally, I would believe that he would have royalties, and now they're going to go after whatever royalties he may have had, right? So it goes on, forfeiture determinations as soon as practical after a verdict or finding of guilty or after a plea of guilty or nolo contendere is accepted on any count in any indictment or any information regarding which criminal forfeiture is sought. The court must determine that property is subject for forfeiture under applicable statute. If the government seeks forfeiture of a specific property, the court must later determine whether the government has established the prerequisite nexus between the property and the offense. Now, what they're saying here is that the government has to establish the link between the money and the offense, right? Nexus, that's essentially what that means, the link, right? And we already know what they're going to say because they put it in an indictment. They're essentially going to say that the money that R. Kelly has was basically for the purpose of basically abusing people. So therefore, we're going to take that money away. That's the link. And they're also going to say that the money was gained through his criminal enterprise. This is what they're going to say. I guarantee you, this is what they're going to say. Now, for the supporters that may be hearing things that I'm saying, and you're saying, oh, you're too negative, I'm telling you what it is. I'm telling you what's going to happen. Sorry. I'm telling you what's going to happen. I'm telling you what the next steps are. This is what's going down, right? They're going to say that the money that he has was a part of a criminal enterprise, and therefore we're going to take that money so that he can no longer use it to abuse and hurt people. That's what they're going to say, guaranteed. If you disagree, comments below, right? And then we go on to other things such as a preliminary order. And then it goes contents of a specific order. If the court finds that the property is subject to forfeiture, it must promptly enter a preliminary order of forfeiture setting forth the amount of any money judgment, directing the forfeiture of a specific property, and directing the forfeiture of any substitute property if the government has met the statutory criteria. The court must enter the order without regard to any third party's interest in the property. Determining whether a third party has such an interest must be deferred until any third party files a claim in an ancillary proceeding under Rule 32. Now, this is pretty important. This section here where it talks about third party interest in the money. So we're talking about his finances, right? And we've already established that they're about to come after whatever money he has, right? One thing that R. Kelly could do is that he could have somebody come forward, right? Let's say Jocelyn Savage, right? And if him and Jocelyn Savage had any agreements whatsoever, for example, maybe there was a promise similar to the promise that was given to Azrael, where he said, I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. If that type of promise was made to Jocelyn Savage, then Jocelyn Savage, in my own personal opinion, again, I'm not a lawyer, right? But, and I'll get into this more, but Jocelyn Savage can come forward and as a third party and say, hey, we were in a relationship. Part of our agreement is that he would pay my expenses for the rest of my life. And, this is what my expenses are. So therefore, I'm entitled to, this amount of money, right? And, that's just kind of like a rough layman's explanation of what could go down. But I think you guys see the point. If there's anyone who's a third party, they can come forth and they have a reasonable claim for any of R. Kelly's money. They can come forward and they can basically have that money set aside for them. And I think it would probably be a good idea if such a thing was to happen, because then that way R. Kelly wouldn't have all of his money taken, which I believe they're going to do, right? Another obvious situation is that if he was married, then his wife could probably divorce him and then have a claim to some of this money. And I'm pretty sure there's other exceptions out there as well, but we're not going to spend too much time on that, right? So we go down to, right. So hold on a second. So time, unless doing so is impracticable, the court must enter a preliminary order or order sufficiently in advance of sentencing to allow the parties to suggest revision or modification before the order becomes final as to the defendant under Rule 32.2b, right? And then we talk about seizing the property. The entry of a preliminary order, or I'm sorry, the entry of a preliminary order of forfeiture authorizes the Attorney General or designee to seize the specific property subject to forfeiture to conduct any discovery the court considers proper in identifying, locating, or disposing of property, and to commence proceedings that comply with any statutes governing third-party rights. Right? The court may include in the order of forfeiture conditions reasonably necessary to preserve the property's value pending appeal. So basically, if they've identified property before the guilty verdict, then they're allowed to come after that specific property. And they're also allowed to conduct a discovery, right? To identify any property that R. Kelly has, locate any property he may have, and dispose of any property. But when they say dispose, they mean selling, right? So let's say he has a luxury car, then they can take that and then they can sell it, and then they can do what they want with the money, right? Typically, it's probably going to be for, well, they can do anything they want. Let's just be honest, right? But we will have to wait and see if if Judge Ann Donnelly basically gives a criminal restitution, right, to basically pay off some of the alleged victims, or victims at this point because he was convicted, or if the government is just going to seize the property and basically take it on into their own resources and they do what they want with the property or with the money, right? And it's going to be interesting to see if any third party comes forth, right? I think hopefully somebody does come forth to try to preserve some of his property. But, and actually, we're talking about property here, but when that basically means we're not simply talking about money. We're talking about any property that he has, right? Either intellectual property or physical property, right? Now, from what's been explained to me is that Sony owns all of his masters, so that's owned by Sony. But any property that he may have in that area that Sony doesn't own is now property of the government, right? So they have rights to, if he has any music rights, intellectual property rights to music that is not owned by Sony, it's now going to be property of the government. You see where this is going? So they're basically going to take everything he has, right? Money or property, right? And then sentence and judgment, when final, at sentencing or at any time before sentence, if the defendant consents, the preliminary forfeiture order becomes final as to the defendant. If the order directs the defendant to forfeit specific property, it remains preliminary as to the third parties until the ancillary proceeding is concluded. And again, if a third party comes forward and says, hey, R. Kelly made such a promise to me, or I had a contract with R. Kelly and this money is due to me, then that third party will get a chance to have that money set aside for him or her, right? Notice and inclusion in the judgment. The court must include the forfeiture when orally announcing the sentence, or must otherwise ensure the defendant knows of the forfeiture at the sentencing, right? So it's going to be very telling in May to see what happens, to see if they're going to put a garnishment or monetary value to this conviction. That's one, besides looking at the amount of time he potentially can get. And I think he's going to get some serious time. That's in another video. I'll try to attach it to the end of this. But I think they're going to try to give him some Larry Nassar time, or they're going to give him some Keith Raniere time, right? we're looking at multiple life sentences, or we're looking at probably hundreds of years in prison. Pretty much all the same, right? And again, that's not me being negative. I am an R. Kelly supporter. I'm just telling you what it is, and this is what he's dealing with right now, right? So if you want to pretend that all this stuff is not going to happen, you can go ahead and do it. But I'm telling you what's coming next, and basically, R. Kelly has to figure out a way to get around this stuff. And in some of my videos, I'm going to talk about some of the possible solutions that he could basically try to employ to try to save himself from some of the madness that's about to come. Right? So just be on the lookout for those videos. And then it says the court must also include the forfeiture order directly or by reference in the judgment, but the court's failure to do so may be corrected at any time in Rule 36. So they may do something slick. They may not actually talk about the amount of money that they're going to take from him, or they may not include the money judgment into the judgment. They can just come back later and do it, right? And basically, that's the gist of it. That's all I really wanted to cover. So let's see, is there anything else I want to? Yeah, I mean, that's basically all I wanted to cover in terms of the court proceedings and the money judgments, right? Any property that they take, they're going to sell for value, and they're going to extract any value they can, and they're going to do whatever they want to do with that, right? And the ancillary proceedings, right, entering final order of forfeiture in general, if as prescribed by statute, a third party files. Okay, so this is important. So honestly, I don't know what type of an agreement that R. Kelly had with Jocelyn Savage, but again, if there was a bona fide agreement between Jocelyn Savage and R. Kelly, Jocelyn Savage can come forth and say, hey, I was his companion, and we made an agreement that I would always have, you know, like let's say 15,000 a month for the rest of my life. And that was an agreement between R. Kelly and myself. And basically I want to come in and claim that money before you take all of his money. Then she's allowed to do that through a special proceeding, right? And basically, a third party files a petition asserting an interest in the property to be forfeited. The court must conduct an ancillary proceeding, but no ancillary proceeding is required to the extent that the forfeiture consists of a money judgment. In the ancillary proceeding, the court may, on motion, dismiss the petition for lack of standing, for failure to state a claim, or for any other lawful reason. For the purpose of the motion, the facts set forth in the petition are assumed to be true. Now, just because Jocelyn Savage or whomever comes forward to try to make a claim on any potential money, and again, we're not talking about restitution here, right? We're not talking about potential victims. There's a separate proceeding in the post judgment, which is going to basically be used to pay off alleged victims at this point, right? So victims can apply for restitution if they wanted to, right? That's separate, right? But this is more so people who've had agreements with R. Kelly or contracts with R. Kelly. They can come forth and basically try to get the what's due to them, right? So again, Jocelyn Savage is probably one of the only people I can think of that probably could come forth and say, hey, we had a relationship, and part of that relationship included him taking care of me for the rest of my life. And before all of this happened, he was giving me 15 or 20,000 a month. That was my allowance, and he said that I was going to receive that for the rest of my life. And basically, I want to come and claim that money before all the property is taken. She can come forth to do that, and I think she should if some type of promise was made. But they could always basically dismiss her claim on some legal notion of lack of standing or failure to state a claim. Lack of standing meaning that you have no right to come forth and speak on these things because you have no what's the word I want to use here? You're not involved in these proceedings. You're not related to him. You're not, you don't have any business deals with them. Basically, in order to, and I'm searching for this correct words, but basically, you have to have some real connection, or you have to have a real stake in the case. Otherwise, your claims can be dismissed for lack of standing. For example, I couldn't go and file motions on R. Kelly's behalf because I have nothing to do with R. Kelly. I'm just some guy on the internet making videos, right? So my claims could be dismissed for lack of standing, right? So you have to have some real stake or real connection in a case. Otherwise, it could be dismissed for lack of standing. And I think that Jocelyn Savage would be able to stand a motion to dismiss for lack of standing because she was in a relationship with this man for an extended period of time, and she had financial ties with this man for an extended period of time. So that lack of standing probably wouldn't they wouldn't be able to dismiss a claim for lack of standing. They may be able to dismiss her claim for lack for failure to state a claim, which essentially means that there's nothing in law that justifies giving you this money. So to beat this, she would have to basically come in and give a legal reason on why she's entitled to the money. And one of those reasons would be a contract. A contract is nothing more than agreement between two people, whether verbal or written, it doesn't matter. She could basically come forth. And who knows, she may even have a written agreement between her and R. Kelly saying that she was going to get an X amount of dollars, right? So if she has this, she can come forward and she can claim any monies that she can before they take it away, right? And so that's it, or that's all I wanted to cover for as it pertains to the judgment in this case. Now, with that said, there's going to be a judgment as you just read, and part of that judgment, they can impose financial penalties on R. Kelly, right? So we already know that in his indictment, they're looking to take all of his assets, right? So that's what they're trying to do. There's no way around that. And that's going to happen. There's absolutely, well, let me take a step back. If he doesn't do anything, that's going to happen. There's things that he could do. And again, we're not going to cover that in this video, but there's things that he could do to try to slow that process down or to prevent that, right? But for the most part, this is what's on train, right? Or this is what's on the track. The next thing that they're going to do is that they're going to have the prison professional interview R. Kelly, and that prison professional is going to be trying to get financial information from R. Kelly, right? And regardless of that, the government is still going to try to take everything that he has that's in the indictment. So the only question now is what financial penalties will Ann Donnelly lay on R. Kelly? We don't know that, right? We don't know what she's going to do. I have no idea, right? But more than likely, the government is going to ask to take any and everything he has, right? And then after that, if there's any criminal restitution that he has to make, he's going to be responsible for that. If there are any court fees and court costs, he's going to be responsible for that. So now with all that said, that is going to take us into the Federal Bureau of Prisons Inmate Financial Responsibility Program. And you can find information about this on the government's website, right? You can go to the Bureau of Prisons and you can, get this information, right? So let me basically break it down to you. So the way this works is that any money that R. Kelly has on his person or any money that is sent to R. Kelly is going to be put into an account. And once that money is put into an account, they are going to assess whether R. Kelly owes any money. And basically, long story short, I'm going to read to you. Don't fall asleep. It goes, a federal judge may sentence a convicted federal offender to confinement and impose financial penalties. To inform the sentencing decision, the judge reviews a pre-sentencing investigation report. We already read that. We already read that section in the post-conviction proceedings, right? This thing is going to provide information about the offender's family history, criminal history, and financial condition. Now, for the purpose of this video, you guys need to pay attention that they're going to be looking at his finances to see what he has, to see what they can take. Details of the offense committed and calculation of the sentencing guidelines. If financial penalties will be imposed, the judge must also decide when the payment is due, either while the offender is incarcerated in the Bureau of Prison Institution or upon supervised release when the offender is under custody of the U.S. Probation Office. Now, let's face it, there and again, I have another video. I may make another one, but the video that I made is called "How Much Time R. Kelly is Going to Get," and basically, you guys need to check that out. And again, they are trying to give him some Larry Nassar time, or they're trying to give him some Keith Raniere time. People out there thinking he's going to get 2 and 3 years. You got to wake up. No offense to you, right? But that ain't going to happen. They finna try to crucify this dude. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, right? Comments below if you think R. Kelly is finna get 2 or 3 years. Comments below if you think R. Kelly is about to get a life sentence or hundreds of years, right? Anyway, the judge sentencing decision is documented in the judgment and commitment order, which is the basis for the Bureau of Prisons incarceration of the offender and the debt collection efforts. Again, debt collection efforts, right? Through the Inmate Financial Responsibility Program. That's what the acronym stands for. Inmate Financial Responsibility Program. When imposed, the financial penalties are to be collected according to the following priority order established in Title 28 U.S. Code of Federal Regulations, Section 545 10-11, right? And basically, the first thing they're going to garnish is special assessments that are imposed by the courts under Title 18 U.S. States Code. Special assessments are monetary penalties imposed for felons, crimes, and classes of misdemeanor crimes. The misdemeanor classes are designated as A, B, and C. Misdemeanor and felonies each have a mandatory assessment that must be imposed for each count of criminal offense. That offense is that the offender is convicted. For example, offenses committed by individuals on April 24th, 1996. The assessment is $100 if convicted of a felony, $25 if convicted of a Class A misdemeanor, $10 if convicted of Class B misdemeanor, and $5 if convicted of Class C misdemeanor, right? So there's that, right? Then it goes on and talks about court order restitution to identifiable victims. It's going to be interesting to see if there is any court-ordered restitution to some of the alleged victims that came out, right? And I keep saying alleged. Unfortunately, we have to call them victims because, let's face it, he's been convicted. And yes, I'm an R. Kelly supporter. And no, I don't really believe a lot of those people are victims, but unfortunately, he's been convicted, so we'll call them victims, right? And then it goes, restitution is a monetary penalty that can be ordered by the court to reimburse victims for losses associated with the criminal act committed against them, right? So it's going to be interesting to see if Geronda Pace is going to get restitution. It's going to be interesting to see if Azriel Clary is going to get restitution and all those other people, right? It's going to be interesting to see if they go after him for that, right? And then it goes, fines and court costs imposed by the court. Fines are monetary penalties associated with the offense imposed as part of the judgment and commitment order. The amount of fine should be sufficient to ensure that the fine taken together with other sanctions imposes is punitive. And then it goes state or local court order obligations, for example, child support, alimony, right? We all know that there was a fiasco with the child support and they locked him up and he had to pay some money up front. I don't know if all that money has been paid. Hopefully it has. But if not, the child support agency can go and file a document in federal court, and then in federal court they can issue a court order to take money from R. Kelly. And then it goes on other federal government obligations, for example, costs of incarceration. And that sounds crazy, but yes, they can charge you for locking you up. And there's a lot of other things that they can charge you for, right? We're going to get into that in a second. Student loans, unpaid federal income tax, right? So, a long story dull, the Federal Bureau of Prisons Inmate Financial Responsibility Program is a program whereby they want you to participate, and basically there's an economy in jail. There's a real economy in jail. There's a underground economy in jail, of course, whereby people are bartering, you know, commissary that they have on their person with each other, right? And then there's, of course, the above board economy where there's this account, if you will, that prisoners receive money in, and prisoners basically are charged for basic services that the prison can give to them, right? You know, some services they not aren't charged for, but other services like using telephone, laundry, things of that nature, they actually may have to pay for. I could be wrong, but long story dull, they do pay for some things. Now I'm looking at another document here. This document is called the U.S. Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Prison, and then it talks about the Trust Fund Deposit Fund Manual, right? Now, again, this is another document on the Bureau of Prisons website, and like I said, I deal in facts. If you don't believe me, you can go and check this out yourself, right? So this document basically talks about the economy. Long story told, the prison economy, but more so the fund or the account that the prisoners' funds are stored in, and it basically covers the policy of how you deduct money from that account and so on and so forth, right? And it starts off purpose and scope to provide inmates an opportunity to purchase articles or services not issued or delivered as basic care by the institution or of different quality, right? You know, so there's some things that the institution is going to provide, and then there's other things that's going to be available, but you have to use money in order to get it, right? It's not going to be given to you just off general purposes. You have to basically use your own money to basically, to get certain things, right? So it goes on to Trust Fund Deposit Fund Manual, and then it says Trust Fund Limited Inmate Computer System. This is the system that keeps tracks of the money or the credits. Let's use the word credits because it's really what it is at the end of the day. It's going to keep track of the inmates' credits, right, that the inmates have, right? And it's the Trust Fund Limited Inmate Computer System, or TrueLinks, right? And interestingly enough, there's also the ability for the inmate to send and receive messages, right? Which the inmate will be charged for, but there's a way for the inmate to send and receive messages electronically. Now, I'm not going to do an exhaustive video on TrueLinks. It's not what this particular video is about. But I really wanted to show you, that there's an economy in prison, and part of that economy is going to involve the taking of money for those prisoners that actually owe a debt to, or for those prisoners that were convicted and given court ordered debt, right? So that's what this is all about. And my personal opinion, I'm not sure it's such a good idea to actually send money directly to R. Kelly because depending, we'll have to wait and see. I'm not going to say it's not a good idea. Let's wait and see what financial penalties are going to be imposed. If there's a situation where they impose more than he can afford to pay, to just pay outright, then it's not going to be a really good idea to send money to R. Kelly, because anything that you send them is going to be taken by the Bureau of Prisons. And that's what I'm trying to get to here, right? So basically, it goes on and it talks about program statements. Um, and it basically goes over a lot of the details, right? So we're just going to do a quick search for debt. And basically, you can see phone withdrawals. Phone withdrawals are initiated by inmates using the inmate telephone system and their pack. Phone withdrawal attempts that fail due to lack of funds do not create a debt and do not generate a $0 transaction. So you can see that there's debt associated with certain phone privileges, right? I would imagine that they don't charge you for all your phone calls, but as you can clearly see, that there's a charge for phone calls. Uh, Let me see here. TrueLink's withdrawal attempts that fail due to lack of funds do not create a debt. Hold on a second. Internal Revenue Services tax liens, IRS tax liens are covered under sections blah, 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 blah. Funds on deposit in the Bureau of Deposits funds are subject to tax liens and levies, right? So if you owe tax money to the federal government, they can come after you, right? And then I'm trying to find one specific. Okay. Initiating debt management procedures. If correcting entries create a negative balance on an inmate's account that cannot be resolved before the inmate releases, debt management procedures are initiated per the program statement, financial management, debt management. So essentially saying that if you have debt, if R. Kelly has debt that he can't pay off before he's released, then he's going to be put in a financial debt management program, right? And then I'm actually trying to find the section. Newly created TrueFacts account at minimum verify the following information: administrative hold indicator, no power of attorney, and maximum allowed deduction percentage for debt. So they're tracking any debts that you have. Um, there was actually something in red. I'm actually trying to find it for you guys. So they are keeping a track of any money that R. Kelly will owe. And if funds are not recouped before release, debt management procedures are initiated per the program statement, financial management, debt management, when the inmate is being or has been released. So even if you get out of jail, you probably still have debt that you have to pay, and they're going to keep track of that. Um, Depending on the withdrawal type selected, TrueFacts create a debt automatically, allows the inmate account to go into a negative balance, or records a zero non-sufficient funds tracking transaction if the amount of the transaction exceeds the balance of the inmate's account. Reference to specific transaction to determine the action initiated by TrueFacts. Where is this damn thing? The debt creation assigns a debt number automatically and encumbers funds until the total owed the government is satisfied. When the debt is satisfied, a JV is processed and the appropriate account entries for the JV extract sessions for upload to the automated account system. So obviously, I'll just read this again. The debts creation assigns a debt number automatically and encumbers funds until the total owed the government is satisfied, right? So they can basically keep track of how much debt you owe, and they're basically going to have a hold on your account until that money is paid off. I'm not even sure I can find what I was looking for. I think yeah, I'm not even. Yeah, so I can't even find it right now. But look, so I think you guys pretty much get the idea. So what's going to happen is that there's going to be a pre-sentencing report, and from that pre-sentencing report, there's going to be the extraction of financial information. Right? They're going to be looking for R. Kelly to volunteer financial information. If he doesn't, part of the post-conviction proceedings, you can see that the government has a right to discover any and all your assets and to basically try to get a court order for those specific assets. But just because they don't get a court order for specific assets, they can still just assign a money judgment to you. And then finally, once he goes over to an actual prison, he will be encouraged or forced to participate in a inmate financial responsibility program, and that's going to be a situation whereby they are going to try to put a financial plan together and use that financial plan to basically pay for any debts that was assigned by the courts. So long story though, I'm just going to wrap this video up. I've taken too much time on it. If R. Kelly is basically giving a court ordered judgment whereby he owes X amount of dollars, then it's going to be a really bad idea to send money to R. Kelly if that money cannot be paid off within a year or two. My thinking is that they're going to hit him with something insane, some criminal restitution, probably like $20 or $150,000. I mean, $20 or $150 million, something insane, and basically that's going to put him in a situation where he won't have any money, and any money that's sent to him is going to go into True Links, and what they're going to do is that they're going to dish out a minimum amount to R. Kelly. Let's say something like $25 a month, could be $100 a month, and they're going to say that's enough money for you to basically live off of, and we're going to use the rest of this money in your account that people are sending in. We're going to use that money to pay off your debts. Right now, again, all of this depends on whether or not R. Kelly is giving restitution and whether or not he's giving a debt that he can't pay. This is something that you guys need to watch out for. Other than that, that's it for this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'm sorry. That's it for this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. And let me know what you guys think about the possibility of R. Kelly being hit with an enormous amount of debt, and whether or not you think whether or not you think it's a good idea to send money directly to R. Kelly for the purpose of paying for his appeal and for his Chicago trial. That's it. Please like, share, and subscribe.